"Do whatever you like," the cowboy muttered, the Apache woman who was fastened to the rancher's barrier. But then the rancher's barrier extended far behind the cowboy as he neared the Apache woman, lashed firmly to one of its stakes. Her arms were fastened behind her, the cord tugging her shoulders rearward. Yet she stood with a firmness that denied frailty. Her gaze tracked him without wavering. They held rebellion, weariness, and something keener lurking below. He anticipated terror, maybe fury. Instead, she confronted his advance with steel resolve. He halted mere inches from her, uncertain whether to utter a word or grasp the bindings. She spotted the delay and raised her chin. "Do whatever you want, cowboy," she said, not pleading, not broken, but daring him. The words sliced through the hushed gap between them. They weren't consent. They were a caution masked as yielding. He had captured her earlier by the stream after pursuing odd traces near his livestock enclosures. Crushed foliage and minor upheavals had surfaced more often these recent weeks. Neighbors accused marauders. He remained skeptical. When he discovered her injured but resisting, clutching a blade, though she could scarcely remain erect, impulse had driven him to strip her of the weapon and secure her before she wounded herself or him. She battled until she could battle no further. Now she was bound here, and he was left grappling with the notion that nothing in this circumstance was straightforward. He dropped to one knee, inspecting the cord at her midsection, not to cinch it, but to ensure it wasn't chafing her flesh. Her contusions were recent, but not inflicted by—
"Do whatever you like," the cowboy muttered, the Apache woman who was fastened to the rancher's barrier. But then the rancher's barrier extended far behind the cowboy as he neared the Apache woman, lashed firmly to one of its stakes. Her arms were fastened behind her, the cord tugging her shoulders rearward. Yet she stood with a firmness that denied frailty. Her gaze tracked him without wavering. They held rebellion, weariness, and something keener lurking below. He anticipated terror, maybe fury. Instead, she confronted his advance with steel resolve. He halted mere inches from her, uncertain whether to utter a word or grasp the bindings. She spotted the delay and raised her chin. "Do whatever you want, cowboy," she said, not pleading, not broken, but daring him. The words sliced through the hushed gap between them. They weren't consent. They were a caution masked as yielding. He had captured her earlier by the stream after pursuing odd traces near his livestock enclosures. Crushed foliage and minor upheavals had surfaced more often these recent weeks. Neighbors accused marauders. He remained skeptical. When he discovered her injured but resisting, clutching a blade, though she could scarcely remain erect, impulse had driven him to strip her of the weapon and secure her before she wounded herself or him. She battled until she could battle no further. Now she was bound here, and he was left grappling with the notion that nothing in this circumstance was straightforward. He dropped to one knee, inspecting the cord at her midsection, not to cinch it, but to ensure it wasn't chafing her flesh. Her contusions were recent but not inflicted by him. She observed intently, attempting to fathom why he bothered. "Why were you on my property?" he eventually inquired. She didn't reply right away. Her stare wandered over the vast expanse before settling back on him. "My kin pursued the buffalo here ages before your barriers," she stated evenly. "But today we trailed something different." She adjusted faintly. "2 of our youngsters were seized. We followed the wagon toward this region." The cowboy gazed at her, taken aback. He had heard no such whisper. "I haven't abducted anyone," he declared resolutely. She examined his features for an extended instant, probing for deceit. Detecting none, she permitted her shoulders to relax just a touch. A ripped band at her shoulder, soil marks on her knees, and abrasions on her palms suggested a pursuit, not an incursion. He comprehended then that she hadn't arrived to pilfer livestock. She had been shadowing kidnappers. That disclosure struck him more forcefully than anticipated. "If someone's transporting folks across this territory," he murmured, "it's not Apache, and it's not landowners. It's someone seeking discord." She offered no reply, but regarded him with cautious intrigue. "If I release you," he continued, "will you share where you last spotted their trails?" She wavered, her countenance flickering between gut feeling and logic. She yearned to rely on him, but couldn't relinquish vigilance. "If you genuinely intend to assist," she uttered deliberately, "then I will reveal what I know, but do not assume liberating me grants you favors." He nearly grinned. "I didn't request anything. I simply wish to halt whoever is traversing here, snatching young ones." Her brows furrowed. She had braced for conflict. Instead, she encountered a partner she hadn't foreseen. He slackened the cord encircling her arms. She didn't avert her eyes, monitoring each gesture. When her wrists at last slipped loose, she drew them ahead, stretching rigid digits, but maintaining her posture erect. The cowboy retreated to afford her room. She lingered by the stake a beat longer, weighing whether to flee or converse. Then she glanced at the terrain surrounding them, surveying it with practiced sight. 2 horsemen, 1 cart hauling load. She indicated toward subtle imprints. "They crossed here prior to your discovery of me." He crouched alongside her, struck by her accuracy.
If they were bound westward, he ventured, they could be aiming for the ancient ford. There are shacks in that direction. She pondered this, then inclined her head once. They set off along the subtle path etched in the soil. Their quietude bore strain, but not animosity, perhaps doubt or interest. She advanced with deliberate strides, each gesture reined in despite her wounds. He observed her endurance and grasped that she wasn't fueled by vengeance. She was propelled by obligation. As the path curved toward a remote hollow in the landscape, she halted to scrutinize deeper impressions. "The one bearing the young," she murmured softly. The cowboy noted the alteration in her visage, a hardening of determination. "You're certain you still desire my company?" he queried. She didn't glance his way. "I don't require you," she stated, "but I might require your firearm." It was the nearest approximation to confidence she had extended. They progressed in tacit accord. When the cowboy decelerated, she aligned with him. When she quickened, he trailed. It was a cadence born not of camaraderie, but exigency. And amid the footfalls, the barrier between them attenuated. By the moment the ford emerged in sight, the tentative pact between them, spawned from cords, doubt, and a scarred dignity, had evolved into something subtly resolute, not companionship, not harmony, but a commencement neither had foreseen. Released from the bindings, the Apache woman pressed onward with fresh vigor, her gaze probing every mark in the soil. The cowboy trailed, neither directing nor pressing her, allowing her the leeway she craved. Pursuit was her skill, and she navigated with exactness that even veteran herders couldn't rival. Every displaced sprig of grass, every displaced stone conveyed significance to her. She dropped low abruptly beside a series of cart ruts. The rims gouged deeper here, she noted. They were hastening. Shredded fabric dangled from a prickly bush close by. She plucked it tenderly, identifying it at once. "This is from one of our daughters." The cowboy perceived the faint quiver in her grasp, a spark of sentiment she typically concealed. He sensed a surge of ire toward the culprits, regardless of their identity. "We'll retrieve them," he vowed. She offered no retort, but neither dismissed the assurance. They pressed on until the terrain descended toward the forsaken stream huts. From their overlook, stirrings glinted near the biggest edifice. The cowboy drew her behind a shallow embankment. She recoiled instinctively, then comprehended he was concealing her from view, not confining her. 2 figures idled by the hut's threshold. One lounged against the siding with a long arm. The other strode uneasily, the mounts tethered nearby appearing restless. These weren't natives. They weren't graziers. They were scavengers, fellows who flourished on turmoil at the fringes of outposts. "They possess firearms," the cowboy breathed. "They seized innocence," she countered. "Weapons don't daunt me." He harbored no skepticism, yet charging the entry would doom them both. She appraised the hut meticulously, then observed, "There's a rear entrance. Structures like this invariably do." He assented, relying on her insight. They arced broadly, hugging the earth amid the high weeds. Her motions were supple, notwithstanding her marks. His were purposeful, attentive to each noise. Upon attaining the hut's rear, she pressed her ear to the timber.
Within echoed the subdued sobs of youngsters and the rustle of footsteps, her eyes shadowed with leashed wrath. The cowboy awaited her signal. She inhaled once, deep and even, then dipped her head. They surged through the portal swiftly and soundlessly. The fellow nearest the youngsters pivoted belatedly. She waylaid him with lithe accuracy, toppling him off kilter and twisting the arm from his hold. Ere he could hoist it, the cowboy lunged at the other before he could elevate his long arm completely. They grappled over the planking, grit billowing beneath them. He dashed the firearm away and immobilized the man with the vigor honed by haste rather than wrath. The fray endured moments. When it concluded, both abductors were stripped of arms and aware enough to lament their decisions. The Apache woman hastened to the youngsters, two petite lasses with enormous, frightened stares. She knelt, caressing their cheeks softly. They clutched at her without delay, crumpling into her hold. "You're safe," she breathed, her tone quivering solely at the fringes. The cowboy beheld the gathering wordlessly. The ferocity she bore in every gesture mellowed into profound guardianship. He discerned then that all she had contended for, every peril she had embraced, had been for this instant. As they emerged into the open with the saved youngsters, the strain between them had altered. She pivoted toward him, her demeanor less barricaded than prior. "You weren't obliged to aid," he remarked. "No, but I chose to." She sustained his regard, assaying the sincerity in his timbre. For the first occasion, she permitted a faint, authentic sigh to surface. Not precisely ease, not precisely thanks, but accord. "You're unlike the rest," she uttered softly. "Perhaps you are as well," he rejoined. The interval between them seemed altered, remolded by their shared deed. The mistrust that had marked their initial encounter had vanished, supplanted by something delicate yet tangible. When she departed with the youngsters, she lingered sufficient to glance rearward once, not a parting, not a promise, merely a muted recognition of the route they had intersected and the improbable tie kindled between two souls who ought to have been adversaries but never wholly were. Their story had commenced with cords and wariness, but it concluded with trust sturdy enough to alter the terrain between their realms.